On December 10th, 1941, British power in Asia cracks in open water. Off Kwanton, the Prince of Wales and Repulse are hammered from the sky with no air cover, and in less than 2 hours, both are gone. The myth of an untouchable empire sinks with them. But the real humiliation is inland, where Singapore waits behind big guns aimed at the sea while the war comes through jungle and roads. And then the campaign's strangest sound starts haunting exhausted defenders. Bicycle chains, bells, and tires whispering through the dark. This is how Britain's greatest Asian stronghold was outmaneuvered. Not by a superweapon, but by speed, nerve, and troops on bikes. Guy Griffiths is 18, clinging to a rail as Japanese aircraft carve the sea into white scars. The Prince of Wales shudders. The Repulse buckles. Orders collide. Turn, brace, abandon, too fast for belief to keep up. Oil spreads across the water. Men hit the sea, coughing, half-blind, swimming through the collapse of a reputation. When Griffiths survives, the question isn't just how 2 ships were lost. It's what they were supposed to protect. Singapore is waiting at the end of this disaster, confidence printed in ink, and commanders still believing the jungle will slow an army that has already solved the roads. December 8th. The war in this region starts in the dark. Up the coast at Kota Baru, the first boats hit the beach. Most people in Malaya have no idea what's happening yet. The soldiers here grew up being told that jungles stop armies. That distance and terrain keep them safe. They're about to see something completely different, an army that ignores the jungle and uses the roads instead. You hear a low rattling sound. Not truck engines, it's the whisper of tires. Dozens of them, then hundreds. Bicycles. Men with light packs and rifles pedal quietly, just out of sight of the headlights. They don't need fuel. They don't get stuck in mud. They take corners fast and split up. Some hit you from the front while the rest slip through the plantations and villages, coming at you from the sides. By the time you figure out where they are, they're already gone. A lance corporal is holding a checkpoint on his first day in real combat. Rifle shots crack from both directions. He yells at his platoon to fall back. They run, packs bouncing. They pass rubber trees weeping white sap in the heat. The bicycles whisper past again. One soldier almost cries, then laughs. He can't believe he just heard a bicycle bell in the middle of a firefight. By the second week, a pattern is obvious. They move fast, they move at night, and they come at you from roads you didn't know about. By early January, at a place called Slim River, tanks and trucks that once felt like fortresses become sitting ducks. A Japanese column moves down the road in the dark, lights dimmed, headlights off, they hit a roadblock, fight through it, keep going. A company commander tells a young sergeant, "We hold until dawn." But around midnight, an engine sound comes from behind them, around the next curve. When a flare goes up, headlights are pointed right at them from the rear. Once your defense is facing the wrong way, everything falls apart. This whole campaign comes down to one thing: logistics. Engines need fuel, and there isn't much. Trucks need bridges, and there aren't many. They need supply lines and guard posts and schedules. A man on a bicycle carries his own fuel in his legs. He can pick up his bike and carry it over a tree. He can coast downhill without making noise or heat. Control the road junctions at night, and you control what happens in the morning. In just weeks, the attackers cover distances that should take months. In the canteens, soldiers swap numbers, a day's march covered in an afternoon, a whole battalion holding a river in the morning with enemy troops behind them by lunch. The whisper spreads. 1 in 3 hits your front, 2 in 3 are somewhere else. Soldiers start saying, "They're already here." A captain stands at a road junction near a plantation, looking at his map. His pencil shakes. He's got 3 choices: hold and get surrounded, counterattack and risk his flank, or pull back and save his men for the causeway into Singapore. He picks the third and hates himself for it. Every training manual said ground is honor. Now, he tells his men, travel light. If you can't run with it, leave it. They abandon crates of tinned fruit and glass bottles that shatter when a bullet hits them. That night, they cross a small bridge and blow it up behind them. A rumor starts. They're going to make a last stand on the island. The big guns point out to sea. Everyone imagines the city beyond as a place with lights and clean water where you can finally stop running. But every day on the road tells a different story. Dust, coughing, and graves at the roadside. The shopkeepers in town see it in their ledgers. A porter expecting 8 trucks a day sees 2, then 1, then nothing. For the soldiers, it's blisters on their feet. For the commanders, it's flags on a wall chart moving faster than anyone can track. A private on watch hears a bicycle chain behind him and swings his rifle. He fires too late. The bullet hits a tree. He yells, "They're not attacking us, they're going around us." His friend says, "Then we move now." That becomes the new instinct. Run before running becomes a rout. January 31st. The exhausted column enters the city. We're now just days from the fall of Singapore. The causeway is a dark line across the water. Trucks grind. Mules refuse to move. Men stumble. Those bicycles still chase them down, quick and tireless. Just before midnight, engineers plant charges where the stone meets the weight. A lieutenant, shaking but focused, checks off his list and says, "Ready." Civilians watch from rooftops as the last vehicles cross. Just after midnight, fire erupts, low, then bright. A section of the causeway buckles. The city flashes. The island is cut off. The next morning, a man leans on the railing and watches driftwood spin in the gap. He says quietly, almost to himself, "Impregnable." Like he's testing whether the word "still" means anything. The posters said fortress. The roads say something else. By now, it's mid-February, 1942. The island is under direct attack. There's a ridge called Bukit Chandu, Opium Hill. It looks like nothing special when you drive past, but when you have to defend it, everything changes. The ground slopes down toward the city, toward the water, toward streetlights flickering in the dark. Whoever holds this ridge can roll straight down into the city. On the night of February 13th, bleeding into the 14th, the heat just sits there. Cicadas buzz like electricity in the leaves, while the men of the 1st Battalion, Malay Regiment, slump like sandbags. They have Lieutenant Adnan bin Saidi. He was a teacher once, and his voice stays low and steady. His shoulders are squared. Adnan walks the trenches, checking on his men. He counts grenades. 2 here, 1 there, nothing left there, while rifles lie oiled and warm. A corporal leans over and tells him, "They're coming at dawn." Adnan shakes his head. "Before that, the enemy has figured out how to move when the cicadas are loud enough to cover the noise." As dawn starts to break, figures come up the slope. They look friendly. Turbans. The way they walk seems right, like Indian troops. Someone whispers, "Punjabi." A hand starts to go up, but Adnan squints. Something's off. The spacing is wrong. The way they hold their rifles doesn't look right. And after a month of falling back, this unit is too neat, too organized. He says one word: fire. The first volley shatters the act. Men in front go down. The rest drop the pretense and run while the defenders work their bolts, load rounds, and shout across the trenches. A grenade flies through the air and pops. Then there are no more grenades. The fighting gets close. Steel on steel. A private's hands go numb, but he keeps pushing. Another one realizes he's using his rifle like a club and laughs, because his dad always said rifles were for distance. Adnan moves along the line. "Hassan, cover the left. Rahman, watch your flank." He's bleeding, but he keeps moving. When an explosion knocks him backward into the dirt, he forces himself up, jaw clenched, pointing with 2 fingers because the other hand won't respond. The line bends. Then it starts coming apart, not all at once, but in pieces. One section falls back to the trees and gets cut off before they can dig in. What's left is just scattered groups. A runner drops into a shallow hole where 2 men are sharing a canteen of rainwater and dust. "Should we pull back?" He gasps. Adnan says, "No." Then he says the words his men know he means. "Biar putih tulang, jangan putih mata." Better to die than live in shame. On paper, the ridge overlaps perfectly for defense. In reality, the left side is exposed, the trees are too thin, and the enemy is so close they flip all that planning upside down. At 20 yards, theory doesn't matter. At 10 yards, whoever stays on his feet wins. When Adnan first realizes the line won't hold, he fights it. The second time, he accepts it. He decides where to spend the last of their ammunition. "On the left," he says. "Now." For a minute, the air fills with powder and snapping branches. Then it's fists and breath and bodies in the dirt. Capture happens quietly. Just a wait, wrists tied, sudden silence. The city below looks the same as it did yesterday. Adnan is killed after he's taken prisoner. The ridge keeps the shape of his boots until rain washes it away. The men who made it out that day don't talk about winning. They talk about small things instead. A friend who grabbed another one by the belt, a bayonet that stuck in wood and wouldn't pull free, a voice saying hold in a way that made everything smaller and clearer for 2 minutes. They remember the turbans at dawn and the one word that let them fire. The fortress story is now just a trench and a motto. The ridge is bleeding. While this is happening on the hill, another story is unfolding at sea. Close to shore, the sea that swallowed battleships looks almost peaceful. On February 14th, the SS Wiener Brook makes a run for it, loaded with nurses, crew, civilians, all of them hoping the open ocean might keep them safe from the war. Hope is easy for bombs to find. The attack hits. At first, no one wants to believe it. Then everyone does at once. The ship takes a direct hit. Fire burns the paint right off the metal. The captain yells the order. Everyone off. The boats launch. People's hands blister from burning ropes as they scramble down. What used to be one ship on the horizon is now scattered, dozens of small boats, each one full of people fighting to survive. When night comes, voices carry farther than you'd think. A nurse calls out for someone and hears an answer somewhere out in the dark. By morning, different groups are heading toward Sumatra, salt crusts on lips. Everyone's exhausted in that bone-deep way that only fear can cause. One boat washes up on Bangka Island, near a beach called Raji, pale sand, palm shadows, and that darker line where the water meets the shore. The nurses there do what they've learned to do, make something from nothing. They tear cloth into bandages. They find water through sheer, stubborn patience. They lean on each other, including a wounded private named Cecil Gordon Kingsley. Together, they stay alive. Then the soldiers find them, the order comes. The nurses are told to walk into the water. Matron Irene Melville Drummond looks at them and says, "Chins up, girls. I'm proud of you all." They move forward. The surf climbs from their calves to their thighs. Gunfire erupts. Bodies drop into water that keeps moving. Vivian Bullwinkle feels the impact, hot, then cold, and lets herself go under. The water around her turns dark, her breath gets thin, her eyes close. Then something happens. She lives. She lives because she stays still. When it's quiet, she crawls out and finds Kingsley wounded on the beach. She does what she can, binds his injuries, brings him water, stays as long as it's safe. But she can't carry him. If she stays, she'll be caught. So she turns herself in. What follows are years of hunger, disease, captivity. Later she testifies. She speaks simply and stands straight. She's the only nurse who survived to tell what happened that day in the surf. 22 nurses walked into that water. 1 came back out. That's not just a number. It's something we have to remember. The evacuation was supposed to mean safety, but the line between combat zone and civilian area had already vanished. Non-combatants became targets. And that confident talk about an impregnable fortress, it's just words someone left on a chalkboard and forgot to erase. Sometimes a bullet passes clean through. Sometimes it lodges shallow. A body in water moves unpredictably. Shock can slow the bleeding. Waves block a shooter's line of sight. And then there's the choice to go completely still when every instinct is screaming at you to run. Sometimes survival is just physics. Sometimes it's seconds. Sometimes it's the first aid you give someone else when you're the one who really needs it. But that same weekend, February 15th, something very different is happening in the city. A pen moves across paper. A radio hisses. Boots shuffle in an office while an agreement gets signed. Rifles stop firing. Thousands of them, without a shot. The beach stays in memory like a photograph that never fades. And the war here moves into a new phase. Captivity. February 15th in Singapore. The word surrender spreads like wildfire, whispered first, then broadcast on the radio. Then it just hangs in the silence when men stop checking their rifles because they finally get it. Those guns won't be used today. Sergeant Stan Arneal is young, but he looks 10 years older. A piece of scrap paper, the kind that used to wrap fruit, catches his eye. He grabs a pencil worn down to a nub and starts writing. Writing is the only thing he can control anymore. He writes down the end of everything they called impregnable, how many men are around him, the brutal heat, the look on his friend's face. These details matter when your whole world is falling apart. He notices the taste of rice, how thin it gets the longer you stare at it. One line, he writes, can never be shown to anyone. In a month, it would look like treason. He writes that surrender felt like a truth finally speaking itself out loud. He hides the paper under a mat. If they find it, he'll get beaten or worse. But keeping the record is worth the risk. Changi becomes a place of endless counting. Names called out, numbers answered back, bodies checked for fever, bodies breaking down, bodies moved. Ronald Searle was a gunner. Now he's a witness with a pencil, sketching while his hands shake from what he's watching. His stretcher sits at a crooked angle, the only honest way to draw it, the only way to show how you really have to carry someone who weighs almost nothing. Bone shows through skin on the hand holding a cup. The guards are just tall shadows, no faces, because faces can get you killed. He hides his drawings everywhere, in mattresses, under floorboards, behind loose bricks. One day he burns a drawing. All that's left is ash, and that ash is a face he wanted so badly to remember. Betty Jeffrey keeps a journal that will later be called White Coolies, about women forced to work and left to slowly starve. She writes everything down, what they eat, who gets sick, and small acts of kindness that sound like nothing special anywhere else. Sharing a spoon becomes an act of defiance. A guard who looks the other way matters. A joke that gets 4 people to laugh somehow makes the whole room feel warmer for half a minute. Most of all, she writes that her name is still her name. That matters because they're replacing names with numbers on all the official lists. About 80,000 prisoners in Singapore alone, nearly double that across Malaya, plus tens of thousands more elsewhere. When they surrendered, the Allies outnumbered the Japanese roughly 2-1. Those big numbers that were supposed to mean strength ended up meaning something else: captivity. The camps run like a machine built for paperwork. Roll call at sunrise and sunset. The ration sheets look clean and orderly on paper, so many ounces of rice per man per day, except the rice has bugs, and the men have fevers, so the math falls apart. They move people north to work on a railway that kills more of them than combat ever did, because starvation and disease follow a schedule. Punishments happen fast and public, meant to scare everyone into obedience. But late at night, there are repairs, people using boiled water and shirt buttons to help each other, and jokes whispered in the dark because a joke is a small wedge you drive into despair. Arneal writes 1 line a day. Searle draws faces so they stay human when the whole system wants to turn them into numbers. Jeffrey's words keep people's dignity alive, while hunger strips it away. Pride on posters becomes humility in handwriting. The real truth isn't in speeches, it's in these pages, quiet and waiting. Someone opens a book someday, starts reading, and hears the pencil scratch, like it's happening right now. Words of defeat. A city sounds different after it surrenders. The air feels thin, and sounds carry farther, but not the sounds you'd expect. No more gunfire. Instead, you hear chairs scraping, tin mugs clinking, the rustle of orders that someone else has written. A survivor sits down and writes in their diary. The loudest thing that happened today was the silence between people who can't find words big enough, no language that can hold what they've lost. Years pass. Another survivor stands at a microphone and talks about Raji Beach in simple, direct language. People listening cry. The plainest words hit hardest. Then comes the official version. Cold, precise language frames what happened. The worst disaster and largest capitulation in British military history. That's not an opinion, that's an admission. That's the thing those early posters couldn't even imagine. The numbers say it all. Roughly 85,000 soldiers defending against about 35,000 attackers when they surrendered. Strength that looked good on paper but couldn't survive what actually went down. Airfields destroyed, water pipes cut, bicycles outrunning trucks, guns facing the sea while the real danger came across the strait in darkness. Picture that black water where 2 ships went down in under 2 hours. Picture a single bicycle wheel rolling past a massive concrete gun with nothing left to shoot at. Picture a ridge where people bled and a small beach where 22 nurses walked into the surf and only 1 walked back out. Courage doesn't give you more ammunition when you've run out. It doesn't refill food stores. It doesn't fix bad planning. Women walked into the surf because they were ordered to. A pencil scratched in a dim hut, turning pain into words, fear into something you could hold. That's the circle closing. Impregnable becomes a word people are careful with after this. That's how a myth dies, right there, when you try to say it and realize you can't anymore. The story ends where it started, with a huge historical fact and 1 quiet life. The huge fact is a defeat so massive you can see its consequences from space. Borders redrawn, empires shaken, people scattered. The quiet life belongs to someone who survived what should have killed them, then chose to tell the truth. One thing matters. Never mistake a slogan for a plan. Never assume tomorrow looks like yesterday. Never forget the people who made sure we'd know what actually happened. Guy Griffiths, who swam through oil and kept breathing. Lieutenant Adnan bin Saidi, who said, "Hold," and meant it. Vivian Bullwinkle, who lay still in the surf and then stood up to witness it all. Stan Arneal, Ronald Searle, and Betty Jeffrey, who built a real, lasting memory so the Empire's final boast would never get the last word. Everything has reversed. The posters are gone. The fortresses are rust. But the words and the names are still here.